Okay, everybody, welcome. We're going to talk about how to create amazing presentations. The very first step, you want to engage in some sort of rapport with your audience. A rapport, R-A-P-P-O-R-T, lets the audience know you're human, lets them know you have poise, lets them know you have confidence. And you don't have to say those things directly. It just comes out in your style, your conversational style. You also want to make sure that you call people by name during the rapport section if you can. If you don't know their name, you could gesture to somebody in the front row and say, hey, how are you today? Did you have any trouble getting here? Or what brings you to the program today? And you gesture over here. I could say, hey, tell me your first name, please. Nice to meet you. Henry, what brings you to the program today? And now I'm using his first name. So it's not a mysterious thing, this idea of finding out people's first names. And you build that rapport, and now you have a running start when the presentation begins. You're not starting from a dead stop. You're already moving when the presentation starts. So the great Stephen Covey, who is now passed on, reminds us that we always want to begin with the end in mind. So write that down if you would, everybody. Begin with the end in mind. When you know where you're going with the presentation, it's like a bullseye. It's like a target that you can aim at, and it keeps you from wandering too much during your presentation. If everything you do is to serve the end of your presentation, then you'll never get off course, your GPS will be solid, and it will seem like you just have it really together. Now, when I ask people, when I do this talk to teach amazing presentations, when I ask people, what is the end of your presentation? They usually say, well, it's the last slide, or it's the end of my story, or I say thank you for coming. But I don't want that to be the end of your presentation. All good presentations, Lexi, Kyle, Jim, have what's called a CTA. And CTA stands for call to action. You're always going to ask the audience to do something as a result of your presentation. So even if your presentation is about telling the audience a story, say it, sharing an experience that you had, at the end of that story, there will be a call to action. For example, if your story is about how you almost drowned at the beach one summer, it's a story, right? And the story has an end. The end is a lifeguard came out and saved me, and everything, we all lived happily ever after. That's your story. But that's not the end of your presentation. The end of your presentation is, be careful of the undertow when swimming at the beach. You see? Because I want you to benefit from my presentation. I want it to be a takeaway. I want you to literally take a lesson or a feeling or an emotion with you from the presentation. And if I just end the story, right? If I just end the story and say, bye, everybody, we all lived happily ever after, bye, everybody, it still may be a really good story, but I denied you the chance for that emotional connection, that little lesson about the undertow. So I want to make sure that I leave that with you. Okay. The three parts of the story that I want to share with you are not technical, but almost everybody forgets one of these three parts or doesn't develop it properly, right? So you're going to laugh when I tell you to write this down because it seems so obvious, but there are three parts to every story. The first part is the beginning. The second part is the middle. And Kyle, what do you think the third part is?
End.
Yeah.
Yay.
That's exactly right. So let's talk about the beginning, the middle, and the end. Keep it very simple, but I'm going to give you some advanced techniques for creating an amazing presentation using those three simple components. Lexi, I see you're on the move, but you can answer this question if your mic is still available to you. Same thing with you, Kyle. What do you think is the essential component for the beginning of a presentation? What has to happen?
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear that part.
Sure. What is the essential component of the beginning of a presentation? What must you do at the beginning of every presentation?
Establish confidence.
Yeah, you're going to establish confidence. You're going to set the tone for the presentation. If it's going to be a motivational thing, you're going to be clapping your hands and raising your voice and dancing around a little bit, a happy smile on your face. If it's a somber story, you know, a lesson, then maybe the tone will be much different. So you're going to set the tone. That's a number one thing. Another thing you're going to do is you're going to introduce yourself. If no one has introduced you, you must introduce yourself. Almost all of the presentations I do now, someone is introducing me. But if they miss something, or if they don't say something that's central to my call to action, I'm going to embellish my own introduction. I'm going to say, thank you, Jim, very much for the introduction. And you know, something that Jim didn't mention that might be interesting to you is this. And then I'll tell you, I'm an expert swimmer. You see why that's going to be important to my story, because I almost drowned and I'm an expert swimmer. So I'm going to make sure you know I'm an expert swimmer at the beginning of the presentation. I don't want to say, I want to tell you the whole story and they, oh, I forgot to tell you, everybody, I'm an expert swimmer and I almost drowned. I'm going to tell you at the beginning and set the tone. I'll tell you about all the swimming training I had, all the certifications, all the people I've taught how to swim. And then I'm going to tell you the story about how I almost drowned. So you see how I'm already constructing a very interesting narrative just by being extra careful with the beginning of the presentation. I might also use the beginning of the presentation to help the audience understand who else is in the room with us. I might thank everybody for coming, which is kind of important. You thank everybody for coming, and then you say, just for my own edification, just for my own interest, I'm wondering, who else is in the room with us today? Who else is here? Where are you from? You know, how many people are from Michigan? Please raise your hand. Great. How many people are from Canada? Please raise your hand. Great. How many go to the University of Toledo? Oh, only one. One lonely person. But now everybody's looking around the room and they're learning a little bit about each other. I will not be doing this in the beginning of my presentation, and I won't be doing it at the end of my presentation. There is a time and a place for everything, and the time to find out who else is in my presentation is right now. So I'm going to write that into my talking points. You're all creating your own talking points like Jim is, right? Who else is in the room today? Who else is in the room with us? Next thing I'm going to do is tell you the reason for my presentation. So even if there's a written program, even if the person who has introduced me has told you why I'm here today, I'm going to be very, very clear about it. I'm not going to repeat what they said. I'm going to say it in my own way. Yes, Jim's right. I am going to tell you a valuable lesson today, but I'm going to do it in a story format. Do you like stories? And I'll nod my head yes. Another speaker technique, right? It's called the yes question. Lexi knows this. It's the yes question, right? And so I'm getting you to play with me a little bit. I'll say something like, how many of you have ever been swimming on summer vacation? Raise your hand. Again, getting you to physically do something. So now you're nodding your head. You're physically raising your hand. You may even be remembering your last vacation. So we're engaged. And then I'll say, I want to tell you a little story about something that happened to me when I was on summer vacation one year and how it almost had drastic consequences for me. That's a little like a teaser, right? Something bad almost happened. And then a lesson that we can all draw from it. Does that sound good? Again, I'll get your buy-in, right? And you'll all say, of course it's good. Of course I'm interested. And so then I'll begin the story. So I'm counting here 5 or 6 things that are happening during the beginning of my presentation. And if you wing it, I promise you, you're going to forget half of them. It's just too easy to forget. But if you practice it and you link them all together, you know, and one follows the other in a linear format, you're going to have the best introduction of anybody else speaking at the event. You're going to be right on course, and it'll deliver you. Are we good so far on the beginning of the presentation? Do you have any questions about the beginning?
Okay. That was all the beginning. Okay.
Yep. So I've set the stage, and now you might say, well, that's the introduction. So let me flesh this out a little bit more. The beginning of the presentation might be if you're speaking for 20 minutes, let's keep it easy, 30 minutes, you're going to do a half an hour presentation. The beginning of the presentation might only be 5 minutes to set the stage, tell them what's going to happen, the rapport that you did at the very beginning, the introduction of the speaker, whether I did it myself or somebody else. It's only about 5 minutes. The next section is somewhere around 20 minutes. And this is 15 or 20. This is the middle of the presentation. And we could quibble about exactly what's in the middle, but let's say I could say the Q&A at the end of my presentation is in the middle, or you could say it's in the end of the presentation. Doesn't matter. We know it's going to be at the end of the meat, M-E-A-T, and I'll demonstrate that when we get there. So the middle of the presentation are your slides, if you're using PowerPoint. If you're using 10 slides, it's going to be all 10 slides, or 8 of the 10 slides in the middle of the presentation. It'll be your bullet points and what many people would refer to as your most salient or most important bullet points, right? Because you could open with a big, bold statement, but if you're going to build steps into it, if your presentation has nuance and a little bit of content, you can't do it all in the beginning. It'll take place in the middle. No surprise there. And during this 15 or 20 minutes, you have a major decision to make. And the decision is whether to take questions en route to the ending or ask everybody to hold their questions until the end. This is a major dilemma. I think both are possible. I have a favorite way to do it, but you'll be surprised how many presenters are confused even as they announce their policy. They'll say, I see we have some questions. I'll take a question. No, on second thought, we'll keep the questions until the end. They have no idea how they were going to do this. I know right when I start that I'm going to take questions on the way, all the way through the presentation. Now, what are some advantages and disadvantages to doing this? Guys, what do you think? Oops.
Let me turn my sound back on.
Lexi, what do you think?
I think it's good.
It's good to take the questions on the way?
It just depends on the presentation, really.
What is your favorite way to do it?
I like when I get a question or like when I'm listening to a presentation, I usually ask questions like when they happen, or else I'll forget about them.
That's why I like
That's the same. Yeah. That's the same thing with me too.
Yeah, because your whole thing there is to serve the people. So think about this: you're 5 or 6 or 8 minutes in. Somebody has a question, and you're going to say, "No, not now." Does that seem like that seem like you're serving?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And then worse, you'll say, "I'll answer questions at the end," but then when you get to the end, you forget to call for questions, and now you screwed over your own audience 2 times.
Exactly.
Or you get to the end and you forget to call on that person, or that person forgets their question because now it's not on their mind, and it's all your fault. What a terrible way to treat your own audience. So these are some disadvantages to taking Q&A late in the program. And yet, there are disadvantages to taking the questions now. Like what?
You would forget like where you were at in your presentation, and you just lose your train of thought.
That's exactly right. Because the person that's asking the question was not at your rehearsal. They weren't in your bedroom when you were going over the presentation. Not only didn't you know they were going to ask a question at this particular point, you don't have any idea what they're about to say. And I'm going to tell you something. There are crazy people in the world. And crazy people be sitting in your audience and they'll say to you some totally unrelated thing, and you have to deal with it. Now, when I say crazy, it's a small c, right? Although there could be somebody, a big C crazy in your audience. But if they're not part of your routine, if they're not part of the presentation, they can surprise you with what they ask. Hey, Josie, how are you? Hi, Josie. We're going to let her find her microphone. Her camera's clearly working. And so
Josie.
it's really important that you keep your GPS on when you ask that question. So you'll say, I see we have a question. Yes, in the third row. And then the third row asks that question. And now you've got to answer that question, get them happy, and then get back to your regularly scheduled program. This is not an easy thing to do, especially if you don't have a lot of presentation experience. So that is one of the challenges of taking questions in real time from the audience. What's another challenge? Anybody?
Hi, I just joined.
Hi,
Can you hear
Josie.
me?
Yeah, how are you?
Hey, Josie.
Well, I don't know how this works. I just downloaded it.
Oh, you're with us now. Everything's good.
Yep.
Beautiful. Can
you hear okay?
Yes, everything
Okay,
is good.
Very good. So here's another challenge with taking questions in real time. I've teased you about this already, and that is if you have a 30-minute presentation, and by minute 12 there have been 3 questions already of varying lengths. You have a plan for them. Guess what? You're behind schedule. So now you either have to leave something out of your program, or you have to speed through it. You see, and we're only 8 minutes in, and there have already been 3 questions. You're sure to get another 2 or 3 questions, and now you're going to end your program late, or you've got some other time issue. So it's really important that you build that time in somehow, and you have a little bit of flexibility that you can expand and contract your content at will. And this is a very challenging thing to do, especially if you're using PowerPoint. What's the challenge of expanding your program if you have 10 slides to show? You can't leave out slide 8. How would you ever skip slide 8? You can't. Slide 7 is up. The next button is slide 8. You can't go, oh, here's slide 8, but we're going to skip it because now everybody wants to see slide 8. They'll actually put in the evaluation. He was a good speaker, but he didn't show us slide 8. It's crazy, but this is what people say. So you have to find a way to expand and contract your content. You have to do it in real time, but this is part of the presentation game. So the reason I'm spending so much time on Q&A is, and write this down, everybody, despite all of your preparation, guess what the most interesting part of the presentation usually is? It's Q&A. I can tell you, as somebody who has spoken to a lot of Rotary clubs and given a lot of presentations, Q&A is often the most interesting part. If people were dozing, they wake up during Q&A. If people were not interested before, they're interested in Q&A. I don't know what it is about a voice showing up in another part of the room, but as soon as that happens, they're tuned in. So you can't leave it out, nor do you want to. And yet, we need to find a way to maximize this unscripted, unpredictable portion of the presentation. So let's move on to the third and final component of our presentation. It's the ending. I think it's a very important part of the presentation because the ending contains some key components. The first thing it does is it contains the conclusion of everything that you've been doing. If you've been telling a story, the story ends and wraps up. If you have a moral to the story, this is when the lesson comes out about, beware of the undertow at the beach. If you are delivering a CTA, and I hope you are because every good presentation has a call to action. If you're delivering a call to action, hey, Devankar, how are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing? Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
If you're delivering a call to action, then you are, this is the time to do it. And so we don't do although I've delivered the call to action throughout my presentation, and that's called seeding the CTA, S-E-E-D-I-N-G. I can wait to the very end to say, and the moral of the story is when you're at the beach, no matter how good of a swimmer you are, be careful of the undertow, right? So I deliver that at the very end. But the CTA, the conclusion, and your goodbye, your farewell, your contact information, all of this stuff, thank you for coming, all of this happens in the final minutes of your presentation. In a 30-minute presentation, it might be the last 5 or 6 minutes. I want to break down the CTA now into some specifics, the call to action. So the first thing to remember is always have one. And then we're going to do a little demo with Devankar because he's going to speak on confidence at the RYLA conference. And he's in the midst of putting it together. So I'm going to find out what he has on his mind right now. And then I'm going to help him polish it a little bit in real time with you. And we'll have you off the call here in just a few minutes. So a few things about the CTA. It has to be very specific. If you want people to do something, it has to be specific, not general. So don't just say, be careful out there, right? You want to say, never swim too far from the beach, always swim with a partner, right? I'm being very specific now about how to be careful of the undertow. I didn't say, just be careful, right? It would be like when you leave the house and you're driving, your parents could say, be careful driving, or they could say, make sure you look both ways before you turn. And that's more specific. It's more valuable advice. No texting while driving, right? You may hear this from your parents sometimes when you're leaving the house. They're being very specific with their call to action. The second thing about the CTA, in addition to being specific, is it has to be easy to understand. If it's not actionable and something that they can do, it's not going to be a very elegant or effective call to action. So it has to be something that's easy to understand and easy to implement. I see this happen a lot at conferences. People will say, so if you would, just go to the website and register. But they don't tell us the website. Or they use words in the website that can be misspelled. And then I'm confused. I'll have to try different websites to actually get to the one they want me to go to. See why this is a problem. So it has to be easy. And the CTA finally has to be desirable. It has to be something that they want to do. They won't go to it just because you want them to go to it as presenter. This is probably the biggest mistake most presenters make. You think, as a presenter, I'll make the mistake of thinking that because I'm interested in eradicating polio, that you're interested in eradicating polio. And that's a serious mistake. It's my job to interest you in it and make sure you're interested in it before I issue the call to action. Otherwise, I'm not only wasting my time, I'm wasting your time. You with me? So you all took notes on that. There are 3 components to the CTA. Can you read them back to me? Anybody?
I have one.
What do you have?
The call to action.
Yeah, so the three specific things about the call to action. Number 1, it must be specific.
Contact info at the end. Yeah, be specific, easy to understand, and easy to implement.
That's right. And the third one is it has to be desirable. So specific, easy to implement, and desirable. Yeah, somebody's got a lot of clicking on their end in the microphone. If it's you, you can mute. Thank you. So those are the 3 things with the CTA. And then after the CTA is delivered, the call to action, you would dispense with the formalities. It's been my pleasure to be with you. So some form of gratitude, some form of thank you for listening. A thank you in advance for taking action on the CTA would be nice. You might reference when you're going to see them again next time. So if it's an annual event, I'll see you next year. If I've delivered an online offering, I'll see you online. At RYLA in the morning, I'll say I'll see you after lunch, right? It's always a transition that's taking you to the next place. So what you're thinking about here is what I call what comes next after what comes next. You're always thinking 2 steps ahead. What comes next after what comes next. Any questions about the beginning, middle, or end of your presentation?
Well, Michael, can you send me a summary or bullet points in case I missed stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Jax, what I'll do is I'll post the highlights. It's just going to be bullet points and highlights. I'm going to post them at the associate member page, Facebook page. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. And then anybody that wants them for their own documents, you can copy paste them. That's a speaker trick too. People in the audience will say, "Can you send me your PowerPoint?" You know what I tell them? Absolutely not. You know why? Because I don't need the homework. I did a gig for a while, guys, where I was in a different city every night. And my days were very long, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night, because I had to drive from city to city. I had to eat dinner, right? I had to check into my new hotel. This is the life of a speaker. And I did not want homework when I got into my hotel room at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. So I would find a way to post it in one place where they could go and get it if they wanted it. Now the onus is on them, you see? So it's not that I'm inhospitable. It's just that I have to manage your expectations of me. And so that's an old trick. Rather than send out my talking points to you each individually after this call, I'll post them on the RYLA Facebook page, the RYLA Associates Facebook page. Okay, we're about to tackle Devankar's presentation.
All right.
Yeah, wake up, Tabaka.
Oh, I'm awake.
He had a long day at Wayne State. He just got in.
I
Just got
did.
back from
Thanks for letting me
Portland,
know that
Oregon.
you were driving on the way
I
back.
did just get back from Portland. It was really nice. It was really fun. Went to a West Coast Rotaract conference over there. So I met with a lot of Rotaractors from the West Coast, ranging from Alaska all the way down to Baja, California.
Nice. What city was it in?
Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, Devankar's really, he's got this travel stripe that I have, and he's also very interested, I think, in speaking. And so we're kindred spirits. And on many occasions, he's called me or texted me, and he said, "Can you help me with this?" Or "Can you get me into this event?" And in some cases, we've actually found him money because he's a poor student. We found him money to actually make the trip. And if any of you are interested in doing this, I will tell you that the world is waiting for you, you know?
It is. And it never hurts to ask. That's what I learned. It never hurts to ask.
Did you pay for your trip to the West Coast?
I did pay this time, but you can't always have other people pay for your stuff. You gotta sometimes do it yourself. So
Yeah, at least probably more than sometimes, actually.
yeah, probably more than sometimes.
Devankar's been so lucky. He's like somebody paid for his last 2 trips, and I'm afraid he's starting to get used to it, you know? Like he'll never have to pay for another trip in his life.
Yeah, don't abuse it like that.
But one of the things he's learned too is that there's a payback. When you get back to town, you now owe people. If you can't give them money, you have to give them something else.
Like speeches.
Or volunteer at their events and work registration, you know, because it's hard to monetize that. You know, if they gave you $500, it's hard to say that you working their next registration at their next event is worth $500, but it's worth something. You know, it's a bit of a payback, so that's good. Okay, let's get into Devankar's prezzo and see what we can do to polish it up. You're going to speak on confidence at Schoolcraft on your breakout, correct?
Correct.
And we traded a text earlier today. Let's bring everybody up to speed on what you have planned so far. Can you give us the thumbnail sketch?
So I'm going to be talking about confidence, essentially how you can on three different, basically 3 different points, and basically like what is confidence, how you can kind of display confidence, kind of like show and portray that you're a confident person, and then kind of being sure on content, which is like making sure you know when you're speaking or when you're presenting that you know what you're talking about. So that kind of helps you with not stumbling and not rambling. And
Yep.
finally, a kind of call to action is how to use these tips that I'm going to be teaching into your classroom life and into your professional lives, and allowing themselves to just articulate everything that I provide them.
Okay, so let's use our template from earlier, guys, and help Divankar craft an amazing presentation. We have to begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey counseled us. So how long is your presentation? Do you know yet?
Yeah, it's going to be 10 to 12 minutes, right, Jim?
All right, so 10 to 12 minutes. And what is the end of your presentation? What is the call to action that you're building toward the entire 10 or 12 minutes?
I would have to say trying these tips out themselves and seeing if they have an improvement from where they before they heard you speak, like maintaining eye contact and then going over such tips to allow them to feel like they learned something after my presentation.
Okay, so what we said that the call to action is three things. It's specific, it's easy to understand, and it's desirable.
Yeah.
So let's make it easy, even as we talk about it now. May I wordsmith your long explanation?
Yeah.
And let's get it down to 3 words. Try my tips. If you had to use 4 words, try my confidence tips. That's what all this is boiling down to. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you want to embellish it at the end. You don't want to just say at the end, try my confidence tips, or maybe you do. Maybe that is exactly the simple, elegant way to say it. Try my confidence tips and you will be confident. That's a pretty bold statement. When you texted me earlier, I said, okay, I'm going to teach them 3 things. Again, somebody's microphone is barking at me.
Some squeaky door.
Who is it? Maybe Kyle?
He muted himself, I
Yeah,
think.
he found it. Okay, good. So I said to Divankar, teach them 3 things. So that's the first order of business. Find the 3 things you're going to teach them. Tell them what they are. Give an example of each and a success story of each.
Right.
So now you have an instant skeleton of your talk. And I can tell Divankar's already identified 2 or 3 of the things. Can you give them to us again?
Yeah, so going off from the beginning, it's 1, how to display confidence.
Okay.
So that will essentially be me talking about voice, eye contact, body language, and then I can talk about how maybe an example, a personal story, how when I started doing these things, I was able to hear more positive feedback from my presentations. So I would say that's a success story.
Okay, good. So the first thing is to how to display confidence. What's the second thing that you want to teach? Do you know yet?
That's the other thing. Well, essentially, what is confidence? So maybe I was gonna ask everybody, kind of like an interactive part of the presentation. How do they define confidence? Like, what do these students think confidence is? What does it mean to them?
Okay, and as I sketch now, are you seeing that? Are you seeing backwards or frontwards?
I'm seeing. 1 second.
Probably can't read it at all. Okay, it's chicken scratch. So
Go back to it.
I'm making the notes, and I say the first thing he wants to teach is display confidence, and the second thing is to define confidence. Guess what I'm going to suggest?
The other way around.
Yeah, the first one's got to be define confidence. So you see how quickly the presentation's coming together. We had the skeleton, right? But the arms were beneath the legs. So now we're going to move the arms up where they belong. And what's the third thing? Do we know that yet, Divankar?
Would the call to action count as your third thing, or would that be like a fourth thing?
It's up to you. I would think if you're going to teach them 3 things, that the call to action can't be the third thing.
Right. So the way I have it on here is first, what is confidence? The way I have it is first, what is confidence? Second, how do you display confidence? And then kind of the third thing is being sure on content-wise. But I'm kind of iffy on my third.
All right, so let me offer a quick suggestion that'll have everything fall in place for you. Number 1, what is the definition of confidence? Why it's important? Number 2, how to sound confident. And number 3, how to appear confident. And now you've split up the display into visual and then auditory. And now you have 3 things. Pretty magical. You see how quickly it's come together? I'll tell you something I do better than any other speaker I've ever met is I create my content like fast, lightning fast. And something, I don't know, something in my brain, it's like a Dewey Decimal System. It goes, it all shuffles, and then I know the exact order and how I'm going to do it. And Renee's with me sometimes, and she knows I sometimes have short notice from the meeting planner, the meeting leader. And she says, how do you do that so fast? How did you get organized? And I don't know, I just got, my brain just boom, 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 and all of a sudden it's there. But the good news is because I can get it organized very quickly, I can spend more time on the nuance. I can find humor. I can identify a quotation from a major philosopher that corresponds, right? I can spend more time fashioning the delivery and how I say it. And all that's good news.
Yep, that's great.
Okay. So you see, in very short order, we used the Divankar's, he had some ideas, but we put them in the right order. We fleshed them out, and now he's all set to go on the 10 or 12 things because he knows he's going to introduce the topic. He's going to give a demo, and he's going to tell a success story about how it's worked for him. And it practically writes itself. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And best of all, everybody, it's natural. It won't seem like he just threw it together. It'll seem like he spent a lot of time on his presentation. In the end, he's going to be using what I call the power of 3 because he's going to get up in front of everybody and say, there are 3 things I want to tell you about confidence. The first is we're going to cover is the definition and why it's important. The second is how to display I would do sound and then display. How to sound confident. And the third is how to appear confident. And then by the time I'm done, you're going to have a nice primer in confidence, and you can use it in your very next presentation, even if your presentation is next week.
Yep.
And then you go, does that sound good, everybody? And they go, yeah, man, what's not to like? Are you kidding me? That's fabulous.
Yep.
And that's it.
Easy, guys.
What's that?
I said it's easy, guys. That you guys can see how easy it was to make a presentation. So don't stress out too much on it.
Yeah. And then the final way that you can, final tool that will help you really get it together, I'll give you 2. The first one's old-fashioned practice, is running through the line items, the highlights of your presentation in order, and some sort of memorization so you don't have to use notes. And my favorite way to memorize is to change my environment. So I study it on paper, right? And then I put the paper down and I go take a shower. And in the shower, I try to remember. Something about changing the environment helps my brain lock it in. Or I'm driving in the car. I don't read in the car, of course. I look at it before I put the car in drive. Then I set it down in the seat. And while I'm driving, I try to recount it. So by doing this in different formats, in different settings, it really settles into my brain. And of course, there's nothing like recording your presentation on video, which you can do with a simple camera, iPhone, or digital smartphone, is you record your own presentation and watch yourself deliver it. And then you start to see the expressions and how you want to polish it a bit. Lexi has Josie has a smiling face, right? It almost always looks like she's enjoying herself. And that's a good resting face if you're giving a presentation. Kyle's got a bit of it too. There's Lexi's. Ivanka just looks like he's buzzed.
What's that?
I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So let's do some quick Q&A and we'll get you back to your evening, everybody. Questions or comments about this process? Anybody?
Question just generally for Jim, Michael, or anyone. Are any of you using a PowerPoint? I know you touched on that a little bit earlier, but like a Google Slides thing, is that beneficial? Do you think that wouldn't be in this situation? Either way.
Well, let's talk technology for a second. We know that there's a lot going on. Are you speaking about RYLA or just in general?
RYLA.
Okay. So we know there's a lot going on at RYLA. We know that technology tends to muck things up rather than make things easier. We know you won't be using your own computer, which means you're going to have a thumb drive. Nothing really mysterious about how thumb drives work. You'll have to remember to bring the thumb drive. You'll have to remember to practice the thumb drive before your segment. Make sure everything cycles through okay. If you're using sound, that can be a delicate issue. If you're streaming video, probably some deep water you don't want to swim in.
It's challenging with passwords at that place to do that.
Challenging with passwords. So there's more downside than there is upside, unless your slides are so cool and so important that you couldn't possibly get through your presentation without them.
Right. Okay.
The other thing to think about, and this is advanced now, if there are 6 people speaking and everyone's using PowerPoint, you want to be the one who's not using PowerPoint. If there are 6 speakers and nobody uses PowerPoint, then maybe you want to be the only one who's using PowerPoint. But if you jump in that pool, you got to swim with the sharks with all the technology issues. So it's a judgment call.
I just know of one person doing PowerPoint so far.
Only one, okay. So I don't feel strong enough about it to tell you what to do, Lexi. I think this is a good chance for you to experience whatever, the results of whatever decision you make. How's that? I support you.
Solid.
Okay, good.
She knows not to read it, not to have too much text.
I didn't quite hear you, Jim.
She knows not to read the slides or have too much text on each slide.
Oh, yeah. We haven't talked much about that. You only want to use your PowerPoint as a guide. You don't want it to be the essence of your presentation, right? So I recommend only using PowerPoint in the middle third of your presentation, because when you use it in the middle third, it allows you to establish rapport and eye contact in the first third. And then it allows you to, again, get back to eye contact for your call to action. So the PowerPoint is off in the middle third, off in the first third, on in the middle third, and then off in the final third. And the way you do that is the B key, B for black. A lot of people don't know that yet. The one photograph per slide. Don't do a collage. Don't say stupid stuff like, "I'll bet you can't see this if you're in the back of the room." Why would you create a slide that people couldn't see in the back of the room? You're just insulting yourself. So one slide, one photo per slide, no more than 3 bullets per slide, extra size, supersized font so that people can see it. Okay?
So I'm going to be using a PowerPoint for my second presentation for the Rotaract one, because I have some pictures and I kind of want to show those pictures if that's possible. Only because for the Rotaract, I kind of really want them to visually see what it's about and the things that we do, so they can get a better idea, rather than us just talking about it. If that's
I like it. That's good. Of course, now Devankar's got another dynamic. If he's speaking twice, does he want to be the same both times? So if the first time's no PowerPoint, it might help him capture their attention the second time, since now he's old news, right? He's the second time he's been up.
Yeah.
Is that this time he's going to use extra graphics. Now, I don't know what order he's doing the talks in, but that way his 2 talks will be distinguishable. One used PPT, one did not.
Yep.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
What else, guys? I charge a lot of money for this information. Get all your questions in. I'm not kidding. I have, for those of you that have parents that need presentation skills and people, aunts and uncles and stuff, I have an online course, and I charge thousands of dollars for it. And I change people, man. In 6 weeks, you become an amazing presenter, even if you've had problems with speaking in the past. So I am not kidding when I say this is very valuable information. I don't say it to make me, to pump up my chest at all. I'm just saying this is the bomb, this stuff that I'm giving you. And the sooner you learn it, I'm kind of jealous. You're learning it Kyle's a senior in high school. I didn't learn it until I was 32,
Yeah, guys, he's really good. He came out to our Rotaract meeting 2 weeks ago now, and spoke to our members about how to become better speakers. So, and our members really enjoyed it, and I really think they were able to take stuff away that day.
Yeah, that video's on segments are on YouTube. If you Google or search on YouTube, my full name, Wayne State University Rotaract, you can find them. There's 2 or 3 videos.
Okay.
Yep, and also check his Facebook page.
And I think I even put one of the videos on the RYLA Associates page, and if I didn't, I'll make a note to do that. I think I undercharged you for that date too, Devankar. What did I charge you?
Yeah.
You charge a fine fee of $0, but I will definitely compensate you, I promise.
I way undercharged for that. It was my pleasure to give back to Wayne State. It's my alma mater. I did not go to the alma mater.
You should definitely just pay for his parking.
Josie, you had a question?
Yeah, I had 2 kind of logistic questions for Jim. So for timing of the presentation, is there a limit that you want us, or are we kind of just telling you how long we would?
Just tell me how long, but you know how long that people will endure presentations without start texting each other. So I leave that up to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much they can really pay attention and how you do it.
Okay.
My other goal for some of the presentations, trying to see if there's a group activity would we reflect your presentation or not. Some may and some may not. We'll see how that works.
So,
Mine, Jim, it's only going to be like about 10 minutes, so it's not going to be long. Just
Well,
quick
that's fine.
advertise.
Yeah, mine
Okay.
as well.
That's
okay,
fine.
so when we get there when I get there on Friday morning, guys, come up and whisper in my ear your topic and how many minutes your segment is. And then be patient with me because I work like a comedian. I work in bits and we have modules. You remember we have the 4 half days? And then we're going to try to get you, my first goal is to get you into the right half day segment so you're with the themes. And my second goal is to get you in a part of the program where we need your energy, where we need a female speaker, or we need your topic, or we need a change of pace. And I don't always know when that's going to be. And so it drives Jim crazy, but in the end, it works somehow, is that, so you're on call, right? And you're going to be Friday afternoon, but you don't know exactly what time. And this is how real life works at conferences. So it's not terribly unrealistic. And then I might say something like, okay, we're going to do one more bit and then I'm going to bring Lexi up. And that's when Lexi comes alive. What?
I may be doing 1 or 2 of them on Thursday. I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
That's for me because mine's not really a presentation. I'm talking one about our state conference up in Grand Rapids. So
okay,
we're
that's
gonna do that.
topic.
Yeah, it'll probably be during Thursday.
And just for my own edification, Josie, do you know your topic already?
Yes, it is leadership skills in school.
I'm
I
sorry.
wanted to.
Could you say that again?
It's leadership skills within the school.
Leadership skills within the school.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. And Lexi, do you have a topic?
Yeah, mine's what kind of leader are you?
What kind of leader? Okay. And where are you going with that, with your call to action? Deciding, are you going to run through some leadership types and then have them decide what kind of leader they are?
Yeah. So it's kind of like true colors, go with like leadership.
And then encourage them to go be that person, right?
Yeah.
We might do that Thursday. I haven't decided yet.
Okay. And then Dee's going to talk about confidence.
Jim, do you know approximately what days you're doing mine?
No, I don't. I won't make up my mind. The Rotaract one is obviously towards a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I was thinking Rotaract should be Saturday kind of for sure because it's kind of like a good end-off, send-off type thing.
Yeah, the others I'll let you know soon.
The call to action there would essentially be okay. I mean, the call to action for the Rotaract one is essentially once you graduate, get involved with a Rotaract club and find out if there isn't a Rotaract club, start one up. So It's kind of
Maybe
like
you
the call
can
to
try-
action there.
Maybe you can try and investigate what common Rotaract clubs are in Michigan. Just that. Just a suggestion.
Yeah,
So,
I can have like a list of the Michigan / like Ohio area
Yeah.
ones.
yeah, you know all that
Yeah.
stuff now. Yeah.
So just to review, Bianca, you're going to have 10 seconds notice for your talks.
Smile.
always on my toes.
He'll be like this in his chair, the edge of his chair. Like,
Yeah, that's right.
now, Michael, now. We just don't know. That's the
Yeah,
answer.
if I speak after Michael, it's gonna be something pretty hard to keep up with someone like him.
Just
Well,
do your
we're all
best.
in
He's
this
been-
together,
he's
and
finally-
my
he's
job
finally
is to
got
make
it.
you look good, all of you.
Yeah.
And your job is to make me look good, may I add, because we're all on the speaker dais, right? And you never compete with the other speakers. You always try to complement and supplement them.
And that's my job too.
Lexi, what exactly is going on?
Yeah, I was kidding,
moving every
but
day, huh?
yeah, I know. Yeah.
Lexi, you want to introduce your guest? How you doing?
I forgot I was muted.
All right.
Okay, thanks everybody. It's time for us to sign off. I'm going to post this video on the associates page. So if you got a buddy who couldn't make the call, make sure you share the post with them or route them to it so they can get the benefit of the primer.
Yep.
And we may do another one before the event, but if we don't, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being involved. We're very, very proud of you as associates, and you bring a special energy to the program that we couldn't get any other way. So it really means a lot.
Yep, for sure.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
See
you.
later.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Take it easy. Thank you so